Season 3 of Warrior is great.
Family can be complicated.
And I'm really happy that we got a Season 3. If you guys recall, Season 1 and 2 took place on Cinemax before they basically scrapped any of their own bespoke productions, and no one was sure where Warrior was going to go. It was kind of a sort of in the middle. Where is it going to go? HBO Max? No, it's going to go to Max now. So thank you very much, Max, for having the courage to actually pick up the show and run with it. It is a phenomenal season, and I'll tell you why right now. So season 3 takes place about 2 or 3 months after the events at the end of season 2. And if you guys recall, at the end of season 2, there was a huge riot that takes place in one of the Hutongs, where you literally get to see Assam, our lead protag, put out some Bruce Lee moves. He does some nunchuck stuff and kicks the snot out of a lot of people. And it was a phenomenal fight scene. I think I watched it 5 or 6 times immediately, and I think I've watched it another 5 times since. The show does a really good job of adding that sort of brutality into, well, as I say, Cinemax had this going with Banshee, and they certainly have it going with Warrior. Season 3, as I mentioned, takes place a few months afterwards, and it follows the same peeps that we saw in Season 2. Only this time we have Jason Tobin, who plays Young Jun.
You know there's a door right there.
Shut up and help me.
Who's the head of one of the Tongs, and against him is Mai Ling, of course. And these two are basically head-to-head throughout the entire season. His father dies at the end of season 2, or disappears at the end of season 2, and there's a bit of a power vacuum. So Mai Ling is basically trying to get all of her soldiers together, and the same on the other side. They've kind of carved up a bit of San Francisco, at least the Chinatown in San Francisco, and one side is doing one things with drugs, while the other side is doing other things with money laundering and printing money, at least in season 3. And they do a very good job of sort of looking at the desperation and how criminality is sort of formed when there are institutions, government institutions, that are put in place to actually restrict people. And throughout season 3, we see that. We see, of course, the Chinese element. We see the Irish element, people who are desperate trying to find work. And it's just done so well. One of the nice things I like about this season is that they added a bit more Western element into this. So almost every show, you have a little bit of a sort of Western cowboy shootout. And I think one of the reasons they were able to do this so well is by drawing in and growing more of the police element. Kieran Brew, of course, plays Bill, and he's this big burly guy that we've seen in season 1 and 2, and they give a lot more meat on the bone in this season to actually play out and show the corruption of the police force and the frustration of people who are trying to do good in the police force. Now, these people are not good by any means. They're mostly racist people who are racist because they're desperate to keep their own lives, or not own lives, but their own quality of life. And so you see the development of him going from basically being kicked out of the police force in the first episode, I think it is, to things that happen, of course, towards the end of the 10 episode season. And it's done very naturally. More elements are brought in from characters in season 2, and again, they are fleshed out a lot more. And that's what season 3 kind of is to me. Season 1 and 2 were extremely big on action. I think I've seen some of the best action in that. I mean, a lot of people liken that to Raid Redemption. And season 3 certainly has the action, do not get me wrong, okay? I mean, the first episode starts with Assam kicking the hell out of people in a very Bruce Lee-like way. And of course, we also have Joe Tasman return, and he kicks the hell out of people. We have a lot of new characters come here, and they all do their action part. But season 3 definitely digs more into the emotional side of things and the more dramatic side of things. It's like the more mature versions of Game of Thrones, where you had the action, but they weren't as large or huge as season 2 in Warrior was. We had a lot of open shots or open fights in season 2, where you see massive armies of people fighting. You don't really get that until, I think, episode 6 and episode 10 in season 3. And again, once again, they are done so well that they are worth rewatching immediately after you finish watching it, which is what I did with the last episode in particular. But again, the scope is much smaller. It's more personal. So instead of having an army of 50 people in a Tong fighting against another gang of Tong members of 50 people, so this 100 people, 150 people, they don't really do that this much in the show. And I found it worked really well because it made you more, I suppose, focused on certain characters and what happens to them. This season picks up on a lot of different things. It picks up again, of course, on racism and institutionalized racism as far as migration is concerned, and people being migrants and not being allowed to work or being brought in and being paid less than other people. It also looks at homosexuality, which was something I did pick up with one of the characters called Hong in season two. That they travel a bit more with that, as it were, in season three. They also look into a lot more of the corruption side of things from businessmen. I'm talking about white American businessmen in this case, and how they were able to influence policy because, of course, you need your money. And yeah, season three is a large scoped season. A lot happens into each of these episodes. They're all about an hour long, which is quite nice, I think, for a show like this because you get, let's say, 10 minutes of action. Not every episode has 10 minutes of action, majority of them do. And they're able to run with the story a lot more. As far as negatives go, I can't really think of any. I think a lot of the actors are much better in this season, to be completely honest. I'm not going to mention who, but in my season two review, I said there were one or two people. So I was like, maybe they can work on this. But there was quite a few years between season two and season three because they weren't sure what was going to take place. And so that gave people a time to step back or sit back and actually work on their characters. And when people came back together, I'm talking about the actors and production team, of course, they had a lot more of a renewed vigor. And I think I can see that in season three. Whether we're going to get season four, I don't know. The cliffhanger at the end of season three is phenomenal. Some of the characters in this you really, really start to like. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they're not likable. Well, they're all likable, sorry, but they're not good people. They're all bastards. There's nobody who's innocent in this. No one. And some of the characters that really, really stood up for me were, as I just mentioned, Kieran Brew, he as a burly police guy. We once again have, I'm just having a quick look here so I don't forget, Jason Tobin was phenomenal. Olivia Chang, who I got to actually interview, is great. Andrew Koji, phenomenal once again. Hoon Lee really steps into this. He's kind of like the, it kind of reminds me of a character from, I don't know, Snatch or Lock Stock. One of these guys who's a grifter, selling things to this left side, right side, playing them against each other. He is phenomenal in this. I think he actually got to direct the penultimate episode too. He is wonderful. We do have one or two people who also stepped in who are relatively new. Well, not relatively new, but are brand new. We have the Iron Chef, Mark Dacos. I always forget how to pronounce the damn guy's name, but he's phenomenal in this. He brings a really like wizened, aged warrior fighter character who is the sort of like confidant of Mai Ling. So he's phenomenal in this. And yeah, I mean, all of them are. They're all great. The acting in this is top notch. The writing is top notch. The production, my God, man, is top notch. And I really hope they do pick a show like this up because it deserves to be picked up. It's topical with what's happening around the world and the way governments are creating culture wars as far as immigration is concerned. And yeah, it's just a very, really good, fun thing to watch. Another thing that I note the difference between this and season one and two is they have definitely dialed down the sexploitation, I suppose. Season one and two, I think there was full frontal nudity and a lot of sex in it. There's a bit of sex in this, but there's no full frontal nudity. So they're dialing that down. And it actually, I was thinking about it because I got to interview a couple of the actors in season two. It really would have felt weird, like seeing them naked again. Not that they're friends or anything like that, far from it. But when you humanize a character like that, you don't really like it. So I was quite happy that certain characters didn't have to go and do it again. But yeah, there was a marked, I think, conscious effort to dial down things like that potentially just took away from the show. But yes, for me, season three is an easy 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's on 89% at the moment. That's because there's only 7 episodes that have actually been broadcast. Season 2 is still on 100%, and it is a phenomenal season. I want to go and watch season 1, 2, and 3 again with my very soon-to-be wife. Poor woman. So yeah, really worth watching. I'm really happy with season 3, and I hope we get to see a season 4. Catch you guys later.